Watch where you're going. The voice cracked through the lobby like a whip. Maximilian Creed stood near the elevator bank, his Italian loafers gleaming under the chandelier lights of Vanguard Towers. His face twisted with disgust as he stared down at the man kneeling before him. Elijah Monroe didn't look up. He kept his hands steady on the mop, wiping a coffee stain from the marble floor. His movements were slow, deliberate, unbothered. Creed's jaw clenched. "I said watch it." His voice rose. People in the lobby froze. Assistants clutched their phones. Security guards shifted uncomfortably. The morning sun poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting sharp shadows across the polished stone. Everything in this Manhattan tower screamed wealth, power, control, and Maximilian Creed owned it all. Or so he thought. Elijah's hand paused. He glanced up just once. His eyes were calm. Too calm. Creed felt something stir in his chest, something he didn't recognize. Discomfort, maybe even fear. But he crushed it down with arrogance. "You deaf?" Creed snapped. "Move faster. I don't pay you to decorate the floor." Elijah said nothing. He resumed mopping. The silence was heavier than any insult. "Hi, friend. Before we continue the story, kindly tell us where are you watching from? And hit that subscribe button now for you to get more. And I have something new for you tomorrow. Stay tuned. Thanks, let's continue." A young intern hurried past, coffee tray trembling in her hands. She bumped Creed's shoulder. The CEO spun around, rage flooding his face. "Are you serious right now?" He grabbed the tray from her hands and slammed it onto a nearby desk. Coffee splattered across paperwork. The intern's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Mr. Creed, I didn't." "Sorry doesn't cut it," Creed hissed. "You think this is a daycare? Get out of my sight." The girl fled toward the stairwell. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A few employees exchanged glances. No one intervened. No one dared. Creed turned back to Elijah, who was still mopping, still silent. The CEO's lip curled. "You see that? That's what happens when people don't respect who's in charge." Elijah's sleeve shifted as he reached for the mop bucket. Just for a second. Just long enough. A patch of ink appeared on his forearm. Dark lines. Geometric. Intricate. A security guard near the entrance squinted. His breath caught. He recognized something. Something that didn't belong on a janitor. But before he could step closer, Elijah pulled his sleeve down and moved toward the service elevator. Creed watched him go, shaking his head. "Unbelievable," he muttered. He straightened his tie and strode toward his office, oblivious to the shift happening behind him. What was on that tattoo? And why did the security guard look like he'd seen a ghost? By mid-morning, the whispers had started. Employees clustered near the coffee station, voices low. "Did you see how calm he was?" one woman asked. Her colleague nodded. "I've never seen anyone ignore Creed like that." "Who is he?" No one knew. Elijah Monroe had been working at Vanguard Towers for 3 weeks. He arrived before dawn, left after dark, and never spoke unless spoken to. Some assumed he was ex-military. Others thought he was just another temp struggling to pay rent in New York City. But no one suspected the truth. Creed, meanwhile, had moved on to his next victim. A marketing analyst stood trembling in his office, clutching a tablet. "This campaign is garbage," Creed spat, flinging papers across his desk. "You think I built this empire on mediocrity? Redo it. All of it. By tonight." The analyst stammered. "Sir, the deadline is." "I don't care about deadlines," Creed roared. "I care about results. Now get out." The man stumbled out, face pale. Creed leaned back in his chair, smirking. This was his kingdom, his rules, his power, and no one, not even a silent janitor, would make him feel otherwise. But downstairs, the security guard couldn't shake what he'd seen. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos. Military insignias, special ops symbols, classified tattoos worn only by those with clearance levels most people would never know existed. He zoomed in on a screenshot. His stomach dropped. The pattern matched. He glanced across the lobby. Elijah was emptying a trash bin near the atrium, moving with the same quiet precision. The guard's hand hovered over his phone. Should he say something? Should he call someone? But who would believe him? A janitor with that kind of tattoo? Impossible. Still, doubt gnawed at him. He pocketed his phone and walked toward the janitor. "Excuse me," he said softly. Elijah looked up. His eyes were steady, unreadable. The guard hesitated. "You served, didn't you?" Elijah's expression didn't change. He nodded once. "Long time ago." The guard swallowed. "Where?" Elijah's gaze flickered toward the elevator, where Creed had just stepped out, barking orders into his phone. Places people like him don't know exist, Elijah said quietly. Then he turned and walked away. The guard stood frozen. His pulse quickened. This wasn't just a janitor. This was someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. Someone important. And Creed had just humiliated him in front of a room full of witnesses. What had the CEO just done? By lunchtime, the rumors had spread beyond the security desk. A retired judge visiting the building for a quarterly board meeting noticed Elijah wiping down a conference table. The judge paused mid-step. His eyes locked onto the janitor's forearm. The sleeve had shifted again. Just slightly. Just enough. The judge's face went pale. He knew that tattoo. He'd seen it only twice in his entire career. Once on a Navy SEAL commander. Once on a Black Ops operative whose name was still classified. It wasn't just ink. It was a marker. A symbol of authority that transcended rank, wealth, and corporate power. The judge pulled out his phone and made a call. "I need you to run a background check," he said quietly. "Elijah Monroe, working as a janitor at Vanguard Towers." He paused, listening. "Yes, I'm serious. And I need it fast." Across the lobby, Creed strutted past, chest puffed, voice booming. "I want those quarterly reports on my desk in an hour," he barked at an assistant. "And tell accounting to tighten budgets. I'm not running a charity." He didn't notice the judge watching him. He didn't notice the subtle phone calls being made. He didn't notice the shift in the air, the way people's eyes lingered on the janitor just a little too long. Elijah, for his part, continued working. He scrubbed floors. He emptied bins. He wiped down windows. But his posture was different. Straighter. Calmer. Like a man who knew something no one else did. An intern approached him nervously. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked. "After what Mr. Creed said this morning?" Elijah glanced at her. A faint smile touched his lips. "I've been through worse," he said simply. The intern frowned. "Where'd you work before this?" Elijah's eyes darkened. "Classified." The word hung in the air. The intern's breath caught. She wanted to ask more, but something in Elijah's gaze stopped her. She nodded and walked away, heart pounding. Meanwhile, the judge's phone buzzed. He read the message. His eyes widened. He looked up, scanning the lobby until he found Elijah. The janitor was pushing a cart toward the service elevator. The judge's hands trembled as he typed a response. Creed had no idea. None at all. But he was about to. Who was Elijah Monroe? And why did everyone suddenly look terrified? The tattoo became the obsession. By early afternoon, 3 different people had noticed it. The security guard, the judge, and now, a former investor who'd helped Creed launch his tech empire 15 years ago. The investor sat in the lobby cafe, sipping espresso, when Elijah walked past carrying a vacuum cleaner. The sleeve shifted. The ink showed. The investor choked on his drink. He knew that symbol. Not from the military. From corporate records. From sealed documents. From a lawsuit Creed had buried years ago involving stolen shares and a silent partner who'd vanished without a trace. The investor's mind raced. Could it be? Could this janitor be him? He pulled out his laptop and started digging. SEC filings. Shareholder agreements. Offshore accounts. The deeper he went, the faster his heart beat. There it was. Buried under layers of legal jargon and shell companies. A name. Elijah J. Monroe. Listed as a silent owner of 42% of Vanguard Enterprises. The company Creed claimed to own outright. The investor's hands shook. He looked up. Elijah was vacuuming near the entrance, back turned, oblivious to the chaos brewing around him. Or maybe not oblivious. Maybe just patient. Creed, meanwhile, was in his office, feet propped on his desk, laughing into his phone. "I'm telling you, the board won't see it coming," he said. "We'll get the pension fund redirected into offshore investments, and by the time they realize, I'll be untouchable." He hung up, grinning. Power felt good. Control felt better. And humiliating people like that janitor? That was just the cherry on top. But downstairs, the judge had gathered 3 others. The investor, the security guard, and a corporate lawyer who happened to be in the building filing patents. They stood in a tight circle near the marble fountain, voices hushed. "Are we sure?" the lawyer asked. The investor nodded. "I've got the documents. He's not just some janitor. He owns this building." The security guard crossed his arms. "Then why's he mopping floors?" The judge's eyes gleamed. "Because he's watching. Waiting. And Creed just gave him all the ammunition he needs." They looked across the lobby. Elijah had finished vacuuming. He was folding the cord, movements slow, deliberate, almost meditative, like a man who had all the time in the world. "Should we tell Creed?" the lawyer asked. The judge shook his head. "No, let him find out the hard way. What happens when a man who thinks he owns everything discovers he owns nothing?" The lobby buzzed with tension. People moved slower. Conversations dropped to whispers. Even the marble floors seemed to hold their breath. Elijah pushed his cart toward the service elevator, but this time, eyes followed him. Not with pity, not with curiosity, with recognition. Creed emerged from his office, tie loosened, smirk still plastered across his face. He spotted the janitor and couldn't resist. "Hey, Monroe," he called out. Elijah stopped. He turned slowly. His eyes met Creed's. No fear, no anger, just calm. Creed sauntered over, chest puffed. "You know, I've been thinking," he said loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. "Maybe I should dock your pay for taking too long on that spill this morning. Efficiency matters, right?" A few employees glanced away, uncomfortable. But Elijah didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He just stood there, waiting. Creed's smirk faltered. Something about the silence unnerved him. He laughed it off. "Cat got your tongue," he mocked. "Or maybe you just know your place." Elijah's jaw tightened. Just slightly. Just enough. He reached for the mop handle, but his sleeve rode up. The tattoo was fully visible now. Geometric lines. Military precision. And at the center, a symbol that made the security guard inhale sharply. Creed didn't notice. He turned to walk away, but the judge stepped forward. "Mr. Creed," he said firmly. "A word." Creed frowned. "Not now, Judge. I've got meetings." The judge didn't move. "It's about your company. And your janitor." Creed's eyes narrowed. "What about him?" The judge glanced at Elijah, then back at Creed. "You might want to check your shareholder records. Specifically, the silent partner clause from 2009. Creed's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" The investor stepped forward, laptop open. "I'm talking about this." He turned the screen. Creed's eyes scanned the document. His mouth opened, then closed. The words blurred. Elijah J. Monroe. 42% ownership. Controlling interest pending board vote. Creed's knees buckled. He grabbed the edge of a desk. That's impossible." Elijah set down the mop. He walked toward Creed. Each step measured, deliberate. The lobby fell silent. Phones lifted. Cameras recorded. History was being made. "Impossible," Elijah said quietly. "Or just inconvenient." Creed's world shattered. What happens next when the king realizes he's been serving the real owner all along? The laptop screen glowed between them. Creed's fingers trembled as he scrolled through the document. Shareholder agreement. Silent partner. Controlling interest. The words blurred together, but one name remained crystal clear. Elijah J. Monroe. His throat tightened. The lobby spun around him. "This is fake," Creed stammered. His voice cracked. "Someone forged this. It's identity theft." The investor shook his head. "I pulled it from SEC archives 30 minutes ago. It's been there since 2009. You signed it yourself." Creed's face flushed red. "I never signed anything with a janitor." Elijah stepped closer. His voice was low, steady. "You didn't sign it with a janitor. You signed it with a venture capitalist who funded your first tech platform. The one that built everything you're standing on right now." The room went silent. Assistants stopped typing. Security guards leaned in. Even the elevator music seemed to pause. Creed's mouth opened, but no words came out. His mind raced back 15 years. A small office in Seattle. A stranger with cash when banks wouldn't touch him. A handshake. A contract. A promise Creed had buried and forgotten. "You," Creed whispered. His eyes widened. "You were the investor. But you disappeared. The lawyers said you." "I stepped back," Elijah interrupted. "Let you run things. Watch from a distance. But I never sold my shares. Never gave up my stake." Creed's legs wobbled. He grabbed the desk harder. "Why now? Why come back as a janitor?" Elijah's eyes darkened. "Because I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become. Whether the arrogance was just business or something deeper." He paused. "Turns out, it's deeper." The judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Creed, according to the bylaws you established, any shareholder with over 40% ownership has the authority to call an emergency board vote. Mr. Monroe has that authority, and he's exercising it. Today." Creed's face turned white. "You can't do this." Elijah tilted his head. "I already did. The board convenes in 2 hours. Conference room 12. You're welcome to attend." Phones buzzed across the lobby. Emails hit inboxes. News spread through the building like wildfire. The CEO who owned everything owned nothing. The janitor who cleaned floors owned the empire. Cameras recorded every second. Social media exploded. Vanguard Towers was trending in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Miami within minutes. Creed stumbled backward. His chest heaved. This isn't over. Elijah picked up his mop. No, it's just beginning. How does a man rebuild when the foundation was never his? 2 hours later, the conference room filled with bodies. Board members, lawyers, investors, journalists who'd somehow slipped past security. The long glass table reflected the tension in the room. Creed sat at the head, jaw clenched, hands folded. He'd changed into a fresh suit, but sweat still beaded on his forehead. Across from him, Elijah sat calmly, dressed in the same janitor uniform. He hadn't bothered to change. Didn't need to. The board chairman, an older man with silver hair and a Boston accent, tapped his gavel. This emergency session is now in order. Mr. Monroe has invoked Clause 17 of the original shareholder agreement. We're here to review ownership structure and operational authority. Creed shot to his feet. This is a coup. A hostile takeover by a man who abandoned this company 15 years ago. Elijah didn't move. I didn't abandon it. I funded it. Quietly. Consistently. While you took credit for every success and blamed others for every failure. Murmurs rippled through the room. A board member leaned forward. Mr. Monroe, can you prove continuous financial involvement? Elijah slid a folder across the table. The board member opened it. His eyes widened. Bank transfers. Wire receipts. Investment records dating back to 2009. Millions funneled into Vanguard Enterprises through offshore accounts. All traceable. All legal. All ignored by Creed. The chairman flipped through the pages. This shows ongoing capital injections during 3 separate financial crises. Mr. Creed, were you aware of these funds? Creed's face twisted. I thought they were corporate reserves. They were my reserves, Elijah said quietly. Keeping your company afloat when your reckless spending nearly bankrupted it. Twice. A lawyer stood. Mr. Monroe, what are you asking for? Elijah leaned back. I'm not asking. I'm informing. Effective immediately, I'm assuming operational control as majority shareholder. Mr. Creed will remain on as a consultant. With a significant pay cut. Gasps echoed. Creed slammed his fist on the table. You can't do this. The chairman raised his gavel. Actually, he can. Clause 17 is ironclad. It was your idea, Mr. Creed. You drafted it to protect yourself from hostile takeovers. You just never thought it would be used against you. Creed's face went pale. He looked around the room. No one met his eyes. Not the board members. Not the investors. Not even his assistant. They'd all seen the numbers. They knew the truth. Elijah Monroe wasn't a janitor. He was the foundation. And Creed had been standing on borrowed ground the entire time. Elijah stood. I'll give you 24 hours to clean out your office. After that, security will escort you out. Creed's knees buckled. He collapsed into his chair. The empire he'd built, the power he'd wielded, the arrogance he'd displayed, all of it crumbled in a single vote. The board members filed out quietly. Journalists scribbled notes. Cameras flashed. And Elijah walked to the window, looking out over Manhattan. The city that made kings. And destroyed them just as fast. Creed sat alone in the empty conference room. His reflection stared back from the glass table. Broken. Humiliated. Powerless. What does a fallen king do when the kingdom was never his? The next morning, Creed arrived at Vanguard Towers in a taxi. Not a limousine. Not a company car. A yellow cab that dropped him at the curb like any other worker. He walked through the lobby, shoulders hunched, eyes down. Employees whispered. Some smirked. Others looked away. The man who'd terrorized them with insults and threats was now just another face in the crowd. Elijah stood near the atrium, talking with the head of operations. He wore a tailored suit now. Navy blue. Crisp white shirt. No tie. Confidence without arrogance. The board had made it official. Elijah Monroe was CEO. Creed was history. Creed approached slowly. His voice was hoarse. Can we talk? Elijah glanced at him. No anger. No gloating. Just calm assessment. You have 5 minutes. They walked to a quiet corner near the service elevator. The same place Elijah had mopped floors just days ago. Creed's hands shook. I don't understand. Why didn't you just take over from the start? Why the janitor act? Elijah crossed his arms. Because power reveals character. I needed to see who you really were when no one was watching. When you thought you were untouchable. Creed's jaw tightened. And what did you see? A man who mistakes cruelty for strength. Who humiliates others to feel important. Who forgot that respect isn't demanded. It's earned. The words hit like punches. Creed flinched. I built this company from nothing. You built it from my money, Elijah corrected. And you built it on the backs of people you treated like dirt. The intern you screamed at? She's a MIT graduate working for minimum wage because you slashed her department's budget. The analyst you fired last month? He was supporting 3 kids. You didn't care. You just wanted control. Creed's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. Elijah studied him. Sorry doesn't fix what you broke. But it's a start. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Creed. Inside is a severance package. Enough to cover 6 months. After that, you're on your own. Use the time to figure out who you want to be. Because the man you were? He's done. Creed took the envelope with trembling hands. What if I can't change? Elijah's expression softened. Then you'll end up alone. Wealthy maybe, but alone. He turned and walked toward the elevator. Creed stood frozen, clutching the envelope. Around him, life continued. Employees laughed. Phones rang. The city hummed. But for Maximilian Creed, everything had stopped. He looked down at the marble floor. The same floor Elijah had mopped. The same floor that reflected his broken pride. A security guard approached. Mr. Creed, I'll need your access badge. Creed unclipped it slowly. The weight of it felt heavier than it should. He handed it over. Thanks, he whispered. The guard nodded. Good luck, sir. Creed walked out of Vanguard Towers for the last time. The sun was setting over Manhattan. The city glittered with promise and pain. He stood on the sidewalk, watching people rush past. No one recognized him. No one cared. He was invisible now. Just another face. Just another man. And maybe, for the first time in years, that was exactly what he needed to be. Can a man who lost everything find himself in the ruins? Chapter 9. 3 months later, Elijah sat in the CEO office, reviewing quarterly reports. Revenue was up. Employee satisfaction was higher. The toxic culture Creed had built was slowly being dismantled. Elijah had implemented profit sharing, restored pensions, rehired the people Creed had fired. Vanguard Towers was becoming what it was always meant to be. A place where talent mattered more than ego. A knock interrupted his thoughts. The door opened. A young woman stepped in. The intern Creed had humiliated. She held a tablet nervously. Mr. Monroe, the new marketing campaign is ready for review. Elijah smiled. Let's see it. She presented the pitch. Confident. Polished. Brilliant. Elijah nodded. This is excellent. Launch it next week. Her face lit up. Really? Really? You've earned it. She hesitated at the door. Mr. Monroe, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why did you do it? The whole janitor thing. You could have just taken over from the start. Elijah leaned back. Because leadership isn't about titles. It's about character. I wanted to see the company from the bottom up. Understand the people Creed ignored. You can't fix what you don't understand. She nodded slowly. That makes sense. Thank you. For everything. After she left, Elijah walked to the window. The city stretched out below. New York. The place where dreams were built and egos were shattered. He thought about Creed. Wondered where he was. What he was doing. Whether he'd learned anything. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it. I got a job. Warehouse manager in Boston. No corner office. No power trips. Just honest work. Thank you for the wake-up call. I needed it. Elijah stared at the message. He typed a response. Good. Keep going. He set the phone down and returned to the reports. There was work to do. A company to rebuild. People to support. But for the first time in 15 years, Elijah felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Not hiding. Not watching. Leading. The janitor who cleaned floors had cleaned house. And the empire was stronger for it. True power doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be real. 6 months after the takeover, Vanguard Towers hosted a company-wide town hall. The lobby was packed. Employees from every department filled the atrium. Elijah stood at a podium, no notes, no script. Just honesty. When I first walked into this building, he began, I wasn't looking for power. I was looking for truth. I wanted to see if the company I'd invested in had stayed true to its mission. It hadn't. But that wasn't your fault. It was leadership's fault. And I take responsibility for stepping back when I should have stepped up. Applause rippled through the crowd. Elijah raised a hand. We've made changes. Profit sharing. Better benefits. mental health support. But the biggest change isn't policy. It's culture. Respect isn't optional here. It's required. From me, from management, from everyone. An analyst raised his hand. What happens if someone falls back into old habits? Elijah's gaze was steady. Then they're gone. No second chances for cruelty. We're building something better. And that means leaving behind anyone who refuses to grow. More applause. Louder this time. Elijah stepped down from the podium and walked through the crowd, shaking hands, listening, connecting. This was leadership, not from a throne, from the ground. As the town hall ended, Elijah returned to his office. The sunset painted the city orange and gold. He thought about the journey, the humiliation, the reveal, the transformation. It wasn't just Creed who'd changed. The entire company had. And that was worth more than any profit margin. A janitor passed by his office, emptying trash bins. Elijah stepped out. "Hey, Marcus." The janitor looked up, surprised. "Yes, sir. How's the job treating you?" Marcus smiled. "Honestly, best I've ever had. People actually say thank you now." Elijah nodded. "Good. Keep up the great work." Marcus walked away, whistling. Elijah watched him go. Respect, dignity, humanity, the things Creed had forgotten, the things that mattered most. He closed his office door and sat at his desk. The tattoo on his forearm caught the light. Geometric lines, a symbol of service, of sacrifice, of silent strength. It had revealed his identity. But more than that, it had revealed a truth. Power without humility is just noise. Real authority is earned in silence, in action, in how you treat people when no one's watching. Elijah Monroe had proven that, not with words, with presence. And Maximilian Creed, wherever he was, had learned it the hardest way possible. The marble floors of Vanguard Towers still gleamed. But now, they reflected something different. Not arrogance, not cruelty, just honest work, honest leadership, honest humanity. And that, more than any empire, was worth everything. If this story inspired you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because we've got more stories that prove one thing. Respect isn't given, it's earned. And humility will always outlast arrogance. Don't miss the next one. Stay tuned.